God is the love in which I forgive. 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 Thank you so much for joining me today and studying A Course in Miracles workbook for students and the text. We're reading from Lesson 46 in the Foundation for Inner Peace version of A Course in Miracles. And I'm Miracle Willie, forgiveness teacher from the Ozarks. And let's see. God is the love in which I forgive. We're so filled with love that we realize that we're always cared for and protected. We don't need to defend ourselves. We can be like little children and trust our divine parent to care for us in every way, the omnipotent one. So let's believe in miracles. Let's believe that things that the ego can't believe, we know are just the way that it is. God is the love in which I forgive. Before we read it, though, let's look at our text reading. And we read the relinquishment for attack yesterday, and we started on the only answer. A couple things that let me bring. We're in paragraph 4, but in paragraph 1, 2, and 3, just a couple highlights to get your memory back on the only answer. Is remember that the Holy Spirit is the answer, not the question. The ego always speaks first. But he says that the Holy Spirit always answers, though. The ego then raised the first question that was ever asked, but one it can never answer. That question, what are you, was the beginning of doubt. The ego was never answered. The ego has never answered any question since, although it has raised a great many. The most inventive activities of the ego have never done more than obscure the question because you have the answer, and the ego is afraid of you. He doesn't want you to dig too deep. Keep things shallow. When you go to meditate, get distracted is what the ego tells you. Don't look too close. You might find that you're a love being and that this is a mad, insane idea that you're vulnerable and need to defend yourself. The premise that the ego is based on. Paragraph 3, let's just read paragraph 3, we'll start there. You cannot understand the conflict until you fully understand the basic fact that the ego cannot know anything. The Holy Spirit does not speak first, but he always answers. Everyone has called upon him for help at one time or another, and in one way or another, and has been answered. Since the Holy Spirit answers truly, he answers for all time, which means that everyone has the answer now. Paragraph 4. The ego cannot hear the Holy Spirit, but it does believe that part of the mind that made it is against it. It interprets this as a justification for attacking its maker. It believes that the best defense is attack and wants you to believe it. That's the ego's the best defense, to defend yourself, because it believes it's vulnerable. And that the best defense is an attack, and he wants you to believe it. Unless you do believe it, you will not side with it, and the ego feels badly in need of allies, though not of brothers. Perceiving something alien to itself in your mind, the ego turns to the body as its ally, because the body is not part of you. This makes the body the ego's friend. It is an alliance frankly based on separation. If you side with this alliance, you will be afraid, because you're siding with an alliance of fear. 5. The ego uses the body to conspire against your mind, and because the ego realizes that its enemy can end them both merely by recognizing they are not part of you, they join in the attack together. And that word enemy is in quotes because even though the ego is the enemy of the Holy Spirit doesn't even acknowledge that the ego even exists. And that's a key point, and what the Holy Spirit sees, only reality, only truth. Okay, the ego uses the body to conspire against your mind, and because the ego realizes that its enemy talking about the Holy Spirit from the ego's perspective, can end them both merely by recognizing they are not part of you. They join in the attack together. This is perhaps the strangest perception of all, if you consider what it really involves. The ego, which is not real, attempts to persuade the mind, which is real, that the mind is the ego's learning device, and further, that the body is more real than the mind is. No one in his right mind could possibly believe this, and no one in his right mind does believe it. I just love Jesus' wise humor. No one in his right mind could possibly believe this, and no one in his right mind does believe it. Here then the one answer of the Holy Spirit to all the questions the ego raises. You are a child of God, a priceless part of His kingdom, which He created as part of Him. Nothing else exists, and only this is real. You have chosen a sleep in which you have had bad dreams, but the sleep is not real, and God calls you to awake. There will be nothing left of your dreams when you hear Him, because you will awaken. Your dreams contain many of the ego symbols, and they have confused you. Yet that was only because you were asleep and did not know. When you wake, you will see the truth around you and in you, and you will no longer believe in dreams because they will have no reality for you. Yet the kingdom and all that you have created there will have great reality for you, because they are beautiful and true. 7. In the kingdom, where you are and what you are is perfectly certain. There is no doubt, because the first question was never asked. Having finally been wholly answered, it has never been. Being alone lives in the kingdom, where everything lives in God without question. The time spent on questioning in the dream has given way to creation and to its eternity. You are as certain as God because you are as true as He is. But what was once certain in your mind has become only the ability for certainty. 8. The introduction of abilities into being was the beginning of uncertainty, because abilities are potentials, not accomplishments. Your abilities are useless in the presence of God's accomplishments, and also of yours. Accomplishments are results that have been achieved. When they are perfect, abilities are meaningless. It is curious that the perfect must now be perfected. In fact, it is impossible. Remember, however, that when you put yourself in an impossible situation, you believe that the impossible is possible. Abilities must be developed before you can use them. Abilities must be developed before you can use them. This is not true of anything that God created, but it is the kindest solution possible for what you made. In an impossible situation, you can develop your abilities to the point where they can get you out of it. You have a guide to how to develop them, but you have no commander except yourself. This leaves you in charge of the kingdom with both a guide to find it and a means to keep it. You have a model to follow who will strengthen your command and never detract from it in any way. You therefore retain the central place in your imagined enslavement, which in itself demonstrates that you are not enslaved. 10. You are in an impossible situation only because you think it is possible to be in one. You would be in an impossible situation if God showed you your perfection and proved to you that you were wrong. This would demonstrate that the perfect are inadequate to bring themselves to the awareness of their perfection, and thus side with the belief that those who have everything need help and are therefore helpless. This is the kind of reasoning in which the ego engages. God, who knows that His creations are perfect, does not affront them. This would be as impossible as the ego's notion that it has affronted him or God. 11. That is why the Holy Spirit never commands. To command is to assume inequality, which the Holy Spirit demonstrates does not exist. Fidelity to premises is a law of mind, and everything God created is faithful to His laws. Fidelity to other laws is also possible. However, not because the laws are true, but because you made them. What would be gained if God proved to you that you have thought insanely? Can God lose His own certainty? What he's trying to say here is that God doesn't need to prove that you're insane. What He needs to prove is that you're perfect, because that's your reality as He sees it. Everything else is a dream you're going to wake up from. So He's not going to prove to you you're insane. He's going to prove to you that there's a part of you that's not insane. And that's what we're finding and what we're looking for. And that's those thoughts that were in our mind that we were supposed to be looking for yesterday. What would be gained if God proved to you that you have thought insanely? Can God lose His own certainty? I frequently said that what you teach, you are. Would you have God teach you that you have sinned? If He confronted the self you made with the truth He created for you, what could you be but afraid? You would doubt your right mind, which is the only place where you can find the sanity He gave you. And the last paragraph finishes the section, 12. God does not teach. To teach is to imply a lack, which God knows is not there. God is not conflicted. Teaching aims at change, but God created only the changeless. The separation was not a loss of perfection, but a failure in communication. A harsh and strident form of communication arose as the ego's voice. It could not shatter the peace of God, but it could shatter yours. God did not blot it out, because to eradicate it would be to attack it. Being questioned, He did not question. He merely gave the capitalized A answer. He merely gave the answer. His answer, the Holy Spirit, is your teacher. So the teacher is that medium that shows us that we're insane, but that we can become sane by following truth or love or forgiveness. Cheerfulness, kindness. God is the love in which I forgive. And before we read our lesson today, what is going on around the world? Well, it's Angelman Syndrome Day or International Angelman Day. And I thought that was some kind of a fishing, an Angelman, a fisherman. But it's a rare genetic condition causing learning disabilities, and it shows up on chromosome number 15, if I remember right. Annoy, Squidward Day, that's a SpongeBob Day. International Childhood Cancer Awareness. Love Reset Day, and that's your 30-day challenge. Starts the day after Valentine's Day for those people that like to take it. Lupercalia. Today it's the Roman festival of purification and fertility, Lupercalia. National Gumdrop Day, National Hippo Day, and hippos have their eyes and their ears and their nose on the top of their head so they can be submerged underwater. Another thing neat about hippos is they make a sunscreen that comes out of their sweat glands, I guess. But it's a red tint that works as a moisturizer for their skin as well as a sunblock. National Hippo Day. National I Want Butterscotch Day. Remember the Maine Day was in 1889 in Havana, Cuba. There was a ship that sank. I guess it was an explosion. I'm not sure the details of it, but it killed of the 334, I think, people on it, killed 266 of them. Saint Skeletor's Day. day after Valentine's Day. Susan B. Anthony Day. She was born on this day in 1820. She was a women's suffrage spokesperson. World Cholangiocarcinoma Day, or also known as CCA, and that's what my brother Carl, back in April last year, died from, is that it's a bile duct cancer. Yadkin Blueberry. Oh, no, we got one more thing, and that's Nirvana Day. Saved it for last. And it's a Buddhist, the Mahayana Buddhists. They go to the temple or the monastery today as a social occasion to share food and presents. It celebrates Buddha's death, which was his complete entrance into Nirvana, or Parinirvana, celebrated in East Asia, Vietnam, Bhutan, and East Asia, Vietnam, basically. Many of your Hmongs are Buddhists, and their word for peace, we've done it before, we'll do it again now, KT2. Okay, and now the Yadkin Blueberry in edible landscaping. And the Yadkin is a Vaccinium ashei, full, well-shaped southern-type blueberry with excellent soil adaption, wonderful flavor, ripening in late mid-season, beautiful red fall color, native, zone 6 through 9. And then in Permaculture for Beginners by Carrie Mitchell, the next paragraph she talks about, it's in chapter 3, Design Your Permaculture Garden. And she says, once you've decided whether you want more of a traditional garden using permaculture principles, or do you want to do a full-scale food forest permaculture design, that's something that you need to make that decision. Or, you can grow into it. I don't know if you have to really make it, but she said those are a couple options. So, okay, let's go look now in our lesson 46. God is the love in which I forgive. God does not forgive, but because he has never condemned. So those who think that God forgives, they just misunderstand. And of course, God is just love. He doesn't condemn us. God does not forgive because he has never condemned. And there must be condemnation before forgiveness is necessary. Forgiveness is the great need of this world, but that is because it is a world of illusions. Those who forgive are thus releasing themselves from illusions, while those who withhold forgiveness are binding themselves to them. As you condemn only yourself, so do you forgive only yourself. Yet although God does not forgive, his love is nevertheless the basis of forgiveness. Fear condemns and love forgives. Forgiveness thus undoes what fear has produced, returning the mind to the awareness of God. For this reason, forgiveness can be truly called salvation. For this reason, forgiveness can truly be called salvation. It is the means by which illusions disappear. Today's exercises require at least 3 full 5-minute practice periods and as many shorter ones as possible. Begin the longer practice periods by repeating today's idea to yourself as usual. Close your eyes as you do so and spend a minute or two in searching your mind for those whom you have not forgiven. It does not matter how much you have not forgiven them. You have forgiven them entirely or not at all. No gray area for Jesus. If you are doing the exercises well, you should have no difficulty in finding a number of people you have not forgiven. It is a safe rule that anyone you do not like is a suitable subject. Mention each one by name and say, God is the love in which I forgive you, and then name the person. And I noticed that sometimes you might say, well, I don't like what they do, but I love them. I think you could just, the fact that there's something that they're doing, remember, being and having are the same in the kingdom. So if they're doing something you dislike, that's really, they're the one doing it. You can use them as one of your practice periods. We're learning, we want to come to accept everyone just the way they are. God is the love in which I forgive you. So we'll start off our meditation looking for people that we've not forgiven. The people we don't like, which we want to get away from having those kind of people. The purpose of the first phase of today's practice periods is to put you in a position to forgive yourself. After you have applied the idea to all those who have come to mind, tell yourself, God is the love in which I forgive myself. Remember, when you're forgiving your brothers, you are forgiving yourself. So you can now that you've been doing it and you've really tried to look for those that you've not forgiven and you've forgiven them now you can tell yourself, God is the love in which I forgive myself. And it'll have some meaning. Then devote the remainder of the practice period to adding related ideas such as God is the love with which I love myself. God is the love in which I am blessed. The form of the application may vary considerably, but the central idea should not be lost sight of. You might say, for example, I cannot be guilty because I am a son of God. I have already been forgiven. No fear is possible in a mind beloved of God. There is no need to attack because love has forgiven me. The practice period should end, however, with a repetition of today's idea as originally stated. God is the love in which I forgive. The shorter practice periods may consist either of a repetition of the idea for today in the original form or in a related form, as you prefer. Be sure, however, to make more specific applications if they are needed. They will be needed at any time during the day when you become aware of any kind of negative reaction to anyone, present or not. In that event, tell him silently, God is the love in which I forgive you. Okay, well, I think we can do this now. Let's do it as a meditation. We'll close with it. God is the love in which I forgive. And I'll let you have a little bit of time to do it as we practice this song, or as we practice our lesson. I'll sing it. God is the love in which I forgive. 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 Now think of people that you have held something against and say, God is the love in which I forgive, and name the person. God is the love in which I forgive. Now you think up a few and I'll just hum along. God is the love in which I forgive you. God is the love in which I forgive you. God is the love in which I forgive. God is the love in which I forgive myself. God is the love in which I forgive myself. Now, related thoughts can come to your mind. Like, God is the love in which I love myself. God is the love in which I am blessed. I cannot be guilty because I'm a son of God. I cannot be guilty because I am a son of God. I have already been forgiven. I have already been forgiven. No fear is possible in a mind beloved of God. No fear is possible in a mind beloved of God. There is no need to attack because love has forgiven me. There is no need to attack because love has forgiven me. God is the love in which I forgive. God is the love in which I forgive. And I'll be quiet and let you think of a few related thoughts. God is the love in which I forgive. 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 So try to do that 3 times today. God is the love in which I forgive. And then think of those people that you've held something against that you dislike, and put their name in there in your search. And after you've forgiven or brought them to your memory, then tell yourself, God is the love in which I forgive myself. And then go into thinking of other ideas, or make it more meaningful, other ways of saying, God is the love in which I forgive. God is the love in which I forgive, or God is the love in which I forgive myself. You could do it either way. Or for God is the love in which I forgive you. Just think of some related thoughts, in other words. Okay, and then our word for peace is, what is it again? KT2 in the Hmong language of Vietnam or East Asia. God is the love in which I forgive. KT2.